Hello everyone and welcome to another News Coolum video and another plug side chat. I finally got to see TeslaBjorn's Ioniq EV versus Ampera-E race with Powell driving the Ampera-E. And I have a few thoughts on this, but I want to start by saying this is in no way an attempt to like degrade or besmirch the Ioniq EV. I actually like it a lot, and in fact, of the affordable electric vehicles on the market right now, saying sub $40,000 electric vehicles on the market, it's my second favorite after the Bolt EV. And but I did want to sort of comment on the race, and then the other thing to note is I'm hoping to at some point in the near future get my hands on a Ioniq EV to test myself, possibly on my regular 500-mile each way drive that I have to do. So that will be a very good comparison. And then that way I could sort of do an apples to apples comparison because I've done that trip so many times in so many different vehicles, but also at this point, a dozen or so times in the Bolt EV, maybe more than that. First, I know a lot of people are saying, see, this is evidence that charging speed and the build out of a network are more important than battery size. And in some ways, I would agree. But to me, after watching it, the single determining factor was the difference in experience. And so Powell only had 1,600 kilometers on his Bolt EV or Ampera-E, and I think he's not necessarily the one that put most of those kilometers on there. There's definitely an experience difference, and in fact, I think had TeslaBjorn been driving the Ampera-E and Powell been driving the Ioniq Electric, I don't think it would have even been close. And we can do a little bit of a thought experiment on it, right? Because that was about 600 miles. But from an experienced Bolt EV owner, I can note a couple of things that Powell was doing wrong, and then in comparison, what Bjorn was doing right. And so, first thing is, and I know he couldn't avoid this because Powell was live streaming, the Bolt EV seems to have a quirk where when you turn it on while it's fast charging, it will almost always activate battery conditioning. And so it seems like the tolerances are different between when the car is on and when the car is not. So a lot of the times I saw Powell with his car on while DC fast charging, and you'll notice that the rates were 40 to maybe 42 kilowatts usually on those 125 amp chargers. And I'm sure of it. The reason is battery conditioning coming on. And it's why, for me, a lot of times on my trips, if I want to make the best speed I can, I'll actually not turn my car on during charging, DC fast charging, until past the 55%, because at that point it will just draw extra power from the charger. You don't really need to worry about battery conditioning or climate control at that point. But like I said, I know he was live streaming, so he really might not have had that as an option. But that sort of leads into the second thing that I think he did incorrect, and that is he stopped his charges too soon. So stopping at 55% seems like a good idea. But if you go back to what I was saying, because the Bolt EV draws extra power from the charger, that 55% battery taper is more, it's almost academic, because if they referenced it being kind of warm or hot, right? So if it's a bit warmer and the battery needs to cool down and you need to cool down the cabin and you're on a trip like that, it's much better to turn the car on after you hit that cutoff, activate your climate control, cool down your cabin, take advantage of all of that extra power, because your effective charging rate at that point is still going to be near 40 to 45 kilowatts. Most of the time when I'm charging these new EVgo sessions, the average charge rate up to about 65% is still about 42 to 43 kilowatts. So yeah, he should have, for better time, been charging up to 65%. And that would have been why, well, that would have prevented when he ran out of juice at the end. But the other thing too that he was doing, I feel like incorrect, and this is where you can tell the difference between Bjorn and Pawel, is Bjorn was going way deeper into his battery's charge. So you're seeing Bjorn charging at between 10 and 15% battery. It didn't appear like Pawel was going much below 20 to 25%. So you're basically neutering one of the advantages. And I've talked about this in a different video about driving and charging for fastest times. You really want to maximize as much of that lower 55% of the battery as you can with the Bolt EV, because that's when it's going to be charging the fastest. And then the other mistake, and this was sort of the critical error that Pawel made, and they referenced it back and forth, because he cut his charge off short, and then Bjorn cut his charge off short. Bjorn barely made it, but Pawel didn't make it at all, right? And the reason for that is, if you listen to the route that they were talking about, they ended up going on the motorway for the last leg of it. It sounded like Pawel was relying on the middle range estimator on the Bolt EV's range estimator. So it has the max and it has the min. The max is, highly optimistic, and the min is very conservative, and the middle one, it's variable. And so if they had been coming out of traffic, lower speed driving, that middle indicator was going to tell him that he had more than enough range to make it, when that was not actually the case. And that's why, for me, I tend to rely primarily on the minimum indicator whenever I do long trips. And what I found is, even if my minimum indicator says exactly the miles to my destination, I typically arrive with about 10 to 15% battery, no matter how intense the driving really gets. I mean, sometimes, occasionally, I'll need to adjust, but it's very rare. So the fact that they ended on a high-speed run, no, I think he just miscalculated the available amount of energy that the Bolt EV had. Again, that turned out to be a critical error, because it seems like, had he stayed for 5 minutes longer, Bjorn would have stayed for 5 minutes longer, and he still would have ended up ahead. But really, it shouldn't have been that close. And this is just a quick thought experiment, and this is the reason why. Ioniq EV is more efficient than the Bolt EV, and it will charge faster, up to about 77%, right? But the average charge rate isn't that much faster, and the reason for the difference is mostly due to the efficiency. But that's all sort of baked in. On a 125 amp charger, both the Bolt EV and the Ioniq EV are going to add about 22 to 23 kilowatt hours in a 30-minute session. Now, for the Ioniq EV, that means it's 80% full, it's ready to go. For the Bolt EV, it might not even have hit its taper yet. That's only like, you're talking about 30 to 35% of the total capacity that you've added in a 30-minute session. So it really behooves the Bolt EV or Ampera-E driver to stay a little bit longer. And over a 600-mile course, this adds up, because the Ioniq EV driver is going to have to stop about every 100 miles, and that's if they time everything perfect. Say they're getting down to 10% battery, and they stop for 30 minutes, and they get down to 10% battery, and they stop for 30 minutes, right? So all things being equal, right, they're driving at a speed that lets them hit EPA mileage or range estimates. You're going to see the Ioniq EV getting about 100 miles every 30 minutes, and you're going to see the Bolt EV getting about 90 miles every 30 minutes on those chargers. But it's that range difference that makes all of the difference, right? So you start off with an extra almost 100 miles of range. That's one full charge stop that you don't have to make. That's a 30-minute charge stop that you don't have to make, that the Ioniq does. So that already puts you 30 minutes ahead without doing anything else. So you already start with a 30-minute advantage. But if you stop for an additional 10 to 15 minutes each charging session, you actually get to eliminate the fourth charging stop on a 600-mile trip, right? So the Ioniq EV can't do that. So you're actually up on them two charging stops. That's almost an hour. Now, the added efficiency, the shorter length of the charging stops, that does eat into it. But really, if you have two equally experienced drivers, both using as much of the battery's capacity as they can and leveraging the network as well as they can, over 600 miles, the Bolt EV should be at least 30 minutes faster. But, we'll see. And like I said, hopefully I get to test out the Ioniq, myself soon, and I'll be able to do more of a direct comparison with the Bolt EV. One thing that I don't like, and I saw this from TeslaBjorn's videos, it will make me change the way I drive because I like taking at least one long stop, and you really can't justify that in an Ioniq EV. You're done in 30 minutes, and that kind of isn't my style of driving. I do prefer to make one 45-minute to an hour stop over the course of an 8-hour drive. It just makes my stop and drive much nicer and much more convenient. But hopefully, like I said, I'll have a more direct comparison. And again, this is a trip that the Bolt EV can make in 9.5 to 10 hours. So I'll be interested to see what the comparison is between it and the Ioniq EV. I'll be able to make two trips, so the likelihood that something like traffic or congested chargers or things like that shouldn't really be a factor. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. That those are just sort of my thoughts from observing it. Like I said, I'm hoping to get some firsthand data and experiences with the Ioniq soon enough on my own. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It helps out the channel, and thank you for watching.